and the riots begin again. And this is beginning to seem very reminiscent of the riots we saw during President Trump's first administration. Take a look at this video because while it starts small, as you'll see as the video goes on, it gets worse. Here you go.
Pictures out of Paramount, California, where protesters have been clashing with police all day outside a Home Depot. It is still unconfirmed whether immigration officials were conducting an ICE raid, but several ICE vehicles have sustained damages and multiple protesters have now been arrested for an assault on a federal agent. This incident follows a night of riots in Los Angeles following multiple ICE raids in the city. At least 45 people were arrested last night, while DHS says that more than 118 illegals were apprehended this week. The protester tried to storm into an ICE facility last night after being fired upon by radical speakers at a rally. Listen.
Let me know down in the comments below what you think about all this. And again, my first thought is, it feels like we're getting right back into these riots we saw during the first Trump administration. Of course, President Trump is sending in the National Guard to quell the riots, which is a difference, I'll say, from the first administration. And the thing that's striking me is, of course, these riots are happening in very strong Democrat states, California, and as you'll see later, in New York as well. I guess that should not come as much of a surprise. I guess what's surprising to me is the support for people that need to be deported because they're here illegally, but more importantly, ICE is targeting, as all of us know, violent criminal illegal aliens. So these protesters are supporting and asking for amnesty and citizenship for violent criminal illegal aliens, which I simply do not understand. And I'd be very curious to see what you think about that in the comments below.
Free them all! Free them all! Free them all! Because an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us! And Los Angeles does not back down for that kind of fight!
Continue fighting until we reconstruct every single institution from the ground up so that we can grant full amnesty for all immigrants.
Just pausing the video right there for a second, because what he's saying is amnesty for all immigrants. And no, that is not how this works. Immigration is something that's done legally. There are people around the world who spend an immense amount of time to immigrate to the country legally. That's an immigrant. These people, violent criminal illegal aliens, are not immigrating to the country. They're just coming here and they're breaking the law in the process of doing it. And quite frankly, they're overwhelming our system in more ways than one. They're taking resources from people who are legitimately working their butts off and can't get the same resource support because the Biden administration was supporting people here who are here illegally. So this whole amnesty thing for all it, no, absolutely not. But that's the disconnect in the country. And I don't think it's an issue that's going to be solved anytime soon. I don't think this is one of those things where we can just agree to disagree. You have obviously people in this country who just want people to come here and become citizens, regardless of how they got here and regardless of what crimes they commit when they are here. And then you have another group of people, arguably the majority of the country, that says, no, we don't want violent criminal illegal aliens in our country. And there is no happy medium. There will not be. I guess the good news is these people in California and New York, they're always going to vote Democrat anyway. I did a video on a really important subject. What happens to our representation in Congress? Shifting gears a little bit, but hear me out on this. States like California are having a mass number of people leave those states and go to typically Republican states. And what's happening is states like California will lose representation as their population goes down, and the red states will gain representation, as in more seats, as their population goes up. So it's very interesting to see what's happening. I don't think the Democrats are factoring that in. Of course, the Democrats are trying to skew the balance by allowing all these people here illegally to be counted in the census and then get more seats in Congress in states like California. So there's a much bigger issue at play, but it comes down to this. Some people in the country, like this gentleman and others, want anybody that comes into the country illegally to just become magically, at the snap of your fingers, a citizen. And then there's a majority of us here who do not want that. How this gets solved, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But let's continue with the video.
Demand full compensation for all of the victims of this criminal injustice system.
What's going to change this is organizing, and not just any type of organizing, militant organizing.
And now we hear it again from the left. And the guy in the red shirt is clearly from the far left, talking about militant organizing. I understand free speech, but calling for a militant uprising, that's crossing a line. And it's amazing to me how conservatives get labeled as, right-wing extremists and a threat to the country. And then you got people like this guy who get up there and say they want a militant uprising. Okay. But it gets worse. Here you go.
Incredibly, Mayor Karen Bass is still standing with the protesters, saying she's fighting for all Angelenos regardless of immigration status, and doubling down that L.A. is a city of migrants, leaving out the illegal part. But the people on the side, as Karen Bass, are threatening ICE agents, spray painting death to ICE on dumpsters.
And that's what I mean by it gets worse. They're calling for a militant uprising, and then we have people spray painting death to ICE. Kind of hard to misinterpret what the spray painter means by that, by spray painting the word death. That's not good. And unfortunately, as you'll see later in the video, the concern is that somebody's going to get hurt. And that's unfortunate and unnecessary. But what's happening is you have these people on the left calling for a militant uprising, spray painting very threatening words directed towards federal law enforcement officers, and somebody's going to get hurt or worse. And it really does need to stop. The freedom of speech is one thing. Inciting violence is another thing altogether. But let's continue with the video.
Gavin Newsom also weighing in on the riots and blamed them on, get this, President Trump, accusing him of tearing families apart. And this chaos has now spread to New York City today alone as protesters organized in Lower Manhattan. Joining us to break down everything in terms of these protests is border czar Tom Homan. Tom, how is ICE responding to these protests? And thanks for joining us tonight.
Look, we're going to continue doing our job. And yesterday, we got 118 arrests. I was out here yesterday to kick off this operation. And what people aren't talking about is ICE served, several warrants yesterday. These were criminal warrants. This is a criminal investigation. And today, we're continuing operations. They're not going to shut us down. We're out there right now doing operations. We're going to keep doing operations. We brought in more resources to push back the protesters, but I'll say it again, a serious warning. You can protest all you want. You got your First Amendment rights. But if you cross that line of impediment, or you're putting hands on officers, or destroy property, you will be prosecuted. There's zero tolerance on crossing that lines, and that's what we're standing by. We're bringing more resources as we speak. We'll have more resources tonight. We're going to continue doing the job that American people voted Donald Trump in office to do, and we're not going to apologize for doing it.
Tom, it's Alicia Acuna. Again, thank you so much for being here. During the protest yesterday, a Los Angeles City Council member called for mobilization against ICE. Listen.
They know how quickly we mobilize. That's why they're changing tactics. Because community defense works and our resistance has slowed them down before. And if they're escalating their tactics, then so are we. When they show up, we gotta show up even stronger.
So, Tom, will the Trump administration take action against these public officials who are threatening ICE agents with resistance?
Absolutely. And I think Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice is looking at that. And, like I said many times, these elected officials or these non-government organizations, they can't cross the line either. I mean, we got people like, Hakeem Jeffries saying he's going to dox ICE employees, ICE agents out there with masks on. They're wearing masks to protect themselves and their families because they've been doxxed, their families have been doxxed, their life's been threatened, their families have been threatened. I know myself, I had over 1,000 protesters at my house. I expect that as the borders are, but these men and women are putting their lives online every day. They arrested a lot of bad people yesterday and today. They arrested child sex offenders. They arrested people convicted of robbery. They arrested public safety, not only significant public safety threats, but national security threats. They arrested gang members. We're making Los Angeles safer. And Mayor Bass ought to be thanking us for making her city safer. And the term migrant, as Joe Concha rightfully said earlier, they're illegal aliens. There are illegal aliens in this country, and we welcome. We're the most giving country in the world. But these are illegal aliens who committed a crime by crossing this border illegally, then yet committed another crime. Again, yesterday's about a criminal investigation into money laundering, tax evasion, and some of the funds going to cartels in Mexico and Colombia that fund their operations of sending narcotics to this country, killing American people. This is about enforcing the law, and again, we're not going to apologize for doing it. We're stepping up. She says they're going to mobilize. Well, guess what? We're already ahead of the game. We're already mobilizing. We're going to bring National Guard in tonight. We're going to continue doing our job. We're going to push back on these people, and we're going to force the law.
Tom, it's Lydia Hu, and I want to ask you a little bit more about these Democrat demands that ICE agents be unmasked. Some Democrats are saying that if they don't unmask, they're threatening to dox them. Listen to this.
I don't know of any police department that routinely wears masks. We know that there are other groups that routinely wear masks. NSC 131 routinely wears masks.
Sending masked men to snatch, kidnap, and disappear immigrants of all legal statuses across the country.
Every single one of them, no matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes, will of course be identified.
All right, we're going to pause the video again right there for a second because the Democrat politicians are way out of bounds. And you think about for a second what they're calling for. I mean, this is ridiculous. These Democrats, by the way, never stand up and speak against the Hamas supporters at Ivy League schools that are literally terrorizing Jewish students. They never, ever speak up against them when they're wearing their masks. You know, the hypocrisy is beyond disgusting at this point. So it's amazing that these Democrat politicians who hate so many conservatives, who hate law enforcement officials, want these guys and gals to unmask. And obviously, as Tom Homan will point out shortly, the reason they're masked is because they're doing a very dangerous job. They're trying to protect their identities and protect their families. These are violent, criminal, illegal aliens. This isn't, mommy and daddy just minding their own business here illegally. No, these are violent, criminal aliens. And they have support of extremely violent, murderous people in places like Mexico who will not hesitate to task people to hurt and or kill our federal law enforcement officials. So to protect them, they wear masks to protect their identity. And it's absolutely disgustingly amazing to me, I guess it shouldn't be, that Democrat politicians get out there and say, they shouldn't be wearing a mask, and the hypocrisy, but they never say that about the Hamas supporters that terrorize Jews at colleges and universities, never tell them to take their masks off. It's just absolutely, I hope everybody sees how disgustingly evil the hypocrisy of these Democrats is. And of course, we've got that individual from Boston associating federal law enforcement officials with an extreme, right-wing group. It's just, which is not the comparison to make at all, but that's what Democrats do. They can't have an intelligent, fact-based, law-based, consistent-based approach. They have to say, okay, these law enforcement officials are Nazis. Absolutely amazing. And I hope most of the country sees it. But in the meantime, let's get back to the video and pay attention to what Tom Homan says about why, as if we should have to get an education on understanding why law enforcement is masked. But nonetheless, let's give him a chance to speak on the topic. Here you go.
Tom, I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit. Explain to us more, help everyone understand the threat that our ICE agents are facing by just doing their job, why they need to wear these masks, and also what actions need to be taken against Democrats who are demanding that they be unmasked, and what would happen if they do dox them and at least publish their identities.
Look, it's incredible. We're at a place where the guys, the men and women who enforce law, they're the bad guys, and the ones who break the law are the victims. You kidding me? How come they didn't say anything about BLM? They're out there. They were a mask. How about the protesters, all the college campuses that were protesting against Israel and the Jewish students? They're wearing masks. I didn't hear a word about that for these protesters wearing masks, but ICE agents are wearing masks for one reason, because the assault on ICE officers is up over 400%. The assault on ICE officers. They're being doxxed across the country. And their families are being attacked. Their families are being doxxed. Their families are being threatened. And I certainly understand it. I have a lot of death threats. I've been doxxed. My family's been doxxed. I understand it. But they're wearing masks for one reason only: protect themselves and their families. They're doing a dangerous job. This is already a dangerous job. They got to wear a gun. They got to wear a Kevlar vest every day because they're doing a dangerous job every day. While the rest of these people, like Hakeem Jeffries, is sleeping in his bed at night at 3 a.m., nice and comfortably and safe, there's men and women of ICE on the street doing surveillance on significant public safety threats, really bad characters, and national security threats. They're taking it on every day. The men and women of Border Patrol standing on a dirt trail every night at 3 a.m. taking on the bad guy. So this is another threat against ICE agents, and we're asking the Department of Justice to look at these statements and see if there's something we can do. When do you cross that line on threatening ICE officers? And here's the problem. You know, you got all these people now attacking ICE. You saw they're writing death to ICE agents. ICE agents been threatened. Their families been threatened. And you got members of Congress. You got some judges out there that compare ICE to the KKK, ICE to the Nazis. You got city council people saying ICE are terrorists. They're feeding the hatred. And here's my concern. I've been doing this for a long time. It's a matter of time before ICE takes a life or an ICE agent loses their life, because the rhetoric is at an all-time high and is being fed by people who should be more responsible, elected officials especially, who keep firing up this rhetoric. I'm telling you, it's coming. There's going to be a tragedy because they keep throwing gas on this flame.
Let me know down in the comments below what you think about that point Tom Homan just made, which is these Democrat politicians are once again calling conservatives and law enforcement, or associating conservatives and law enforcement with the KKK and Nazis, fascists. It's absolutely amazing. And as we saw, as if we haven't learned enough already, that kind of rhetoric from Democrat politicians is going to trigger somebody on the left, just like they tried to assassinate President Trump, not once but twice. It's going to happen again. And it's going to happen to law enforcement this time. It's just a matter of time. There has to be accountability. And let me know down in the comments what you think that accountability should be for Democrat politicians. I get it, free speech. But there comes a point when that free speech leads to violence, and that violence hurts or takes the life of somebody just trying to lawfully do their job. And who's accountable for that? How do we hold these people accountable? Let me know in the comment section below what you think. It's not like you can just, arrest people for a free speech issue, but if somebody does get hurt and the person that hurt that law enforcement official can get questioned, and it turns out that there is very specific factual information that says, I watched a speech by this Democrat and that motivated me to do what I did. Well, is that enough of an association to hold a politician accountable? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. But from a big picture standpoint, what's happening to me is disgusting. It's been a rather somber video for me. I love my country. It's still the best country in the world. But I'm not 28. I'm not 18. I know what this country was like when it was better. And it's terrifying to me, very depressing to me, to see what it's become. The fact that we have people in this country who are fortunate enough to be in this country, and they call for harm to be done to other people who are simply trying to enforce the law that the people elected them to do, to deport violent, criminal, illegal aliens and keep all of us, including them, safe. And that's what they choose to do with the freedom that was paid for by so many people that gave their lives in defense of this country and what we are. Now, I understand less than 1% of our population serves in the military. And I get it. as a veteran, I understand it. But the reality is we feel this much more dramatically than the average person does because of what we've done. And what I did pales in comparison to somebody in the infantry who had to deal with IEDs on a daily basis and nightly basis. The price that's paid by those people, the civilian population can never possibly comprehend. And here we are witnessing hatred against law enforcement doing the job that the president was elected to do, which is deporting violent, criminal, illegal aliens. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, because number one, I think the National Guard needs to be called out. I think these kind of protests need to be shut down immediately. This isn't free speech. This is a riot. And once it turns into a riot, shut it down. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. I am not in the mood, and I don't think the majority of the population is in the mood to watch riots for the next 4 years. Riots for no other reason than to create hate and discontent, and in this case, support for violent, criminal, illegal aliens. Hopefully, we learn from President Trump's first 4 years that just letting these things go on does not work. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Free speech is one thing, but as soon as those people start talking about militant uprisings, shut it down. As soon as they start spray painting death to ICE, shut it down. Bring in the National Guard, shut it down, arrest them, whatever you got to do. But we need peace on our streets, and we need law enforcement to be able to safely do their jobs to protect all of us. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Want to see more like it, subscribe. As always, until next time, God bless. Love y'all.